Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Sylvia Sin, and I'm honored to be your MC today. Welcome to the API Days Connect Hong Kong 2023 afternoon session. It's brought to you by Bino 14 Limited and Hong Kong Science and Technology Parks Corporation. Before we explore to the world of APIs, I would like to take this moment to express our sincere gratitude. Our sincere appreciation for each and every one of you here. We're grateful to have you as audience to sit here. And now let's get ready for an afternoon full of API awesomeness. Maybe let's talk a little bit about API. API seems not very as popular as talking point as the IT, ABCD, AI, blockchain, computing, cloud computing, big data, that kind of things. But API are absolutely the hidden superheroes of all of this. So they are the secret sauce, the changing the game of communication. Let's get ready to unlock the power of API. May I invite Patrick Chen to give some opening remarks for this afternoon session. Thank you. Let's get this.
So thanks everyone coming in the afternoon, and some of you I think you joined the morning section as well. So just bear with me a few minutes. I need to introduce again the story of API Days. So the reason we are doing API Days is try to connect the human behind the API, because we have a lot of developers doing the API, but how can we connect them and how we can form the information exchange, lesson learned to do something better. That's the key to improve ourselves. So that's why we have the global API community, and then we try to pull them together physically. And this is part of the API Days conference series. So we have the API Days conference in more than 10 cities. So today we're in Hong Kong, and then 2 weeks later we'll be in London. So a bit of some figures. In the API Days Global, we have more than 300,000 API professionals, so we are exchanging our knowledge, lesson learned across the region, and see how we can learn together, and also see the gap, how we can assist each other. So every year we try to come together, so we will publish some of our insights, just like this one, the stage of the API industry in 2022. So I'm part of the team to share, okay, what is the insight, what is happening, what is the trend in the API industry. So that if you are interested on that one, feel free to check it out. So this is the 4th year we are doing that. So I'm not sure whether any one of you joined off all the 4th API Days previously. If yes, then I'm really honored to that. So we do it in a virtual way in the past 3 years, and then this is the 1st year we are trying to do it in physical. So I'm really glad that to see the people here, and then I can see some of my our old friends get connected together. That's also the purpose of the event today. So back to the history of API Days Hong Kong. So as said, the API Days conference is a global series, and it has around 10 years history, but for Hong Kong it's just 4 years. So why we're doing that is because of an interesting moment. 5 years ago, I was being invited as the API Days Singapore MC. This was also their first time to do that. So I've immediately been inspired and feel the strength of a user-driven community. So it is not purely driven by the compliance, the driving force is actually from the market. So we can see a lot of good use cases, people sharing their technologies and experience together, even they may be competitor. So that's why I tried to bring it back to Hong Kong in 4 years ago, and we got 800 online participants. So in this 2 days, we have a lot of good section and speaker lineup. So we have more than 60 speakers and 45 sections. Today is more on, I would say today we try to localize more on Hong Kong, because in API Days Global, we are having a lot of technical talks, workshop, etc. But in Hong Kong, we can see we are more focused on the use cases and why, how to help you to justify. You need to have an investment on a time, budget, on the business perspective. So we try to make the day one more maybe business side and use case sharing, so that you have a better awareness. If you are interested, feel free to join the day 2, the API Masterclass. We will be having a lot of hardcore technology thing. Okay, so just a quick preview about this afternoon. So we are going to have some keynote speaking for some specific topic, and then we will also have some panel specific design for today for the fintech, embedded insurance, very hot topic, generative AI. And because we are doing in Science Park, I try to invite two of my friends. They are actually working in the API, angel investment, and venture capital investment. You can also see how we can think the API business trend from their perspective, which may be very different from your corporate experience. Okay, so thanks again for our sponsor. So without them, we can't really make this event physical. So we have Nginx, part of F5, Software AG, and Suzy on this supporting. And also Fiber API, the Fabrics API. Okay, and we also have some sponsor try to make this event special. For example, we have Moongage, the NFT ticket system, try to bring you maybe your first NFT experience. And we also have it on us to bring you some special coupon, treat you to Starbucks, and also some drinks for your refreshments. Make sure you redeem that. And also a lot of supporting all to help to promote the event to get a free fans for that. Okay, so then last but not least, our co-organizer, Hong Kong Science Park, to help us to set up the event venue so that we can work together to have a good experience, lights, view, etc. Okay, so make sure you redeem your NFT. So this is only for you. And after today, you can't really redeem it anymore. Okay, so if you have any question, just check with Moongate. I think their founder, Peter, is here. Okay, so that's all of my sharing, and I try not to steal the spotlight from the topics today. Okay, if you have any good photos, try to tag the API Days Hong Kong so that we can bring more voice to the global community. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Patrick, for setting the stage for the afternoon session. We are now ready to explore into the world of APIs and open finance. Our first speakers in this segment is Arel, Area Practice Manager at AWS. He will enlighten us on the topic of APIs enabling open banking, shining light on how APIs are driving innovation and transforming the finance landscape. Let's welcome Mark.
Thank you. I'm really excited to be here to talk today, about how the financial services industry has been transforming. If you think about how long banking has been and financial services have been in play, hundreds of years of legacy. And we all know change is not easy, but it's also required, right? So financial services, as a regulated industry, are also being driven to change by outside forces. And I think the interesting thing is that as you look at open banking, right, as a new standard for how financial services companies operate, right, it was sort of inflicted on some by regulators, right? Hong Kong Monetary Authority in 2021 put out their FinTech 2025 strategy, right, which was sort of driving the banks in Hong Kong that they all should go FinTech. Right? Meaning that they needed to adopt and change out of some of their legacy models. But that change isn't easy. And as we look at that, right, beyond regulators driving, right, there are, the actual consumers, right? So the people who are using and consuming financial services, they want to have better experiences. They want to know that their financial institution knows them and knows them in a holistic way. And what can they offer them in a broader landscape, right? So that it's not just a pure transactional relationship, but they want to have something more. And as you look at the markets that we're operating in, right? The start of this year, the global economy was not in a healthy state. And companies, particularly financial services, how do they react and respond to that? How do they enter new markets? How do they transform their operating models? And a lot of that is fueled by open banking and moving towards APIs. And what that really requires is to look at those legacy platforms, look at those monolith systems that banking has sort of traditionally been known for, right? I got my mainframe, I'm going to put everything there. It never goes down, it's reliable. But it's also constrains what you can do. So you don't have that flexibility, you don't have that nimble agility to respond and react to the market that you would if you had a more open type of platform or system. You look at, where the regulators Like, how do you respond to new regulatory demands? How do you look at driving to scale and performance, right? So how do you handle, fluctuations in your markets and address things? How do you enhance your customer experiences, right? So that's difficult in those legacy monolith applications. So at AWS, one of the cool things that we get to talk to a lot of customers, and I mean a lot, right? And we try to gather the intelligence from them, right? And so as we look across the different, sectors in financial services, one of the big common themes, right? Every single customer we talk to, they are looking to continue to transform and modernize. And it's difficult, right? What you've built up over 20, 30, 40 years on those legacy traditional platforms can't be just replaced overnight. So it's a long journey that the financial services companies are going through. And it's more interesting, right? Because those legacy monolith platforms usually sit underneath and behind the scenes. And so their front ends, their mobile apps, their different ways of engagement, their front end and their user experiences are far outpacing what their core platforms can do, right? So there's that need to modernize those platforms and to be able to take advantage of new elements that are going into the market. Right? Anybody here heard of this recent Gen AI thing, right? Think about how are you going to incorporate Gen AI into your mainframe, right? How are you going to incorporate that into your legacy platform? It's a bit difficult, right? Which is why open APIs, open banking allows platforms and systems to take advantage of changes in the market and take advantage of those new technology capabilities. And so what is open banking, right? It's really how do you make the accessibility to the data and the capabilities that are in that traditional financial services platform and opening it up to a broader set of capabilities, right? So it could be a bank, allowing transactions through a third-party application or solution. It's about integrating, a payments platform into another third-party platform. And how do you do that? How do you simplify it down? I'm old, right? So when I started in the financial services industry, everything was overnight batch file transfers, right? And that was not necessarily not the greatest and most efficient way of sharing data and all the work that had to surround that. With open APIs, right now you have that real-time, near real-time experience of being able to access data at the most current state. And I mentioned about the regulatory impacts, right? So a lot of open banking has been driven by regulatory, bodies across the globe to say banks need to do a better job of opening up access to their customers' data. So it's a force driver from outside. But a lot of the organizations look at that and they're like, yes, the regulatory bodies are requesting open banking, et cetera, to be put into place. But as you think about it, right, they're not, usually if you go for funding, a regulatory demand, right, tends not to get the most funding. It's the minimum funding to get me through that check-in compliance. But what does get funded? Things that are going to drive and improve the business. How are we going to increase revenue? How are we going to decrease costs, right? That bottom line type of impact. And that's really where, when we look at this, it's not really that regulatory imperative, but it's how do you transform and look at open banking and APIs as a strategic game changer? How do I evolve? How do I grow? How do I focus on what my company does best? I can expose that through an API so others can consume it. I can monetize that. When I look at maybe something my team does not have the best front-end capabilities or mobile app development, how do you leverage a third party so that you can expose your banking capabilities to another provider in a secure and trusted way so that you can take advantage of a broader ecosystem So no longer are you sort of, contained within your own corporate staff to build and maintain and develop the platforms. And with open APIs, right, as we look at that, right, it creates different business models. Again, I mentioned, can I monetize some of my APIs, right? If I'm, doing, say, credit checks, can I monetize that, create that API, and do something with it so that others can use that by creating a marketplace of APIs? Can you look, and I mentioned a few times about different partner and vendor relationships. And again, as we look at open banking, moving to more API-driven interactions, it allows for better portability of features and capabilities. Everything is changing, right? And it's changing at a very rapid scale. So by having APIs, right, it's easy for me to decouple one API from one provider or capability to then replace that with another one, right? It helps simplify that down, and it expands the potential for what you can do on your banking platform. So obviously, being from AWS, we see certain values, as banks are looking at doing their modernization, moving towards more open banking, using more APIs. Obviously, we see the cloud as a big enabler to that, right? So how do you, take and extend and leverage the cloud, right? Fundamentally, you can improve security. You can, do more. You can take advantage of things that you can't traditionally do from within your own data center. So, having the cloud is really a big enabler to the open APIs and to the banking services. Again, when I first got to Hong Kong, the number of customers I would talk to is like, oh, I can't put my data in the cloud, right? I only can put public data out there. And so then you sort of have to unwind that a bit and say, hey, do you have a mobile banking app? Yes, I do. I'm like, okay, so you got a mobile banking app, but you don't want to put your data in the cloud. I'm like, where do you think your data is ending up, or how does it get to that mobile app, right? It's pretty much going through the cloud, right? So just even changing mindsets, on how and what can be done, it is sometimes not the easiest thing to get through. What are we seeing companies, focusing on? Obviously, there's, platform modernization, right? How are they getting away from very traditional infrastructure models and improving their underlying platform capabilities, whether it's an API gateway, how are they using microservices, how are they moving to event-driven architectures, etc. They're also, how are they doing more real-time capabilities, right? So instead of having things, again, in that overnight cycle, or how are you doing data exchanges based on snapshots in time, how do you move to more real-time or near real-time transactions and informational points? How do you create new experiences? And using APIs to say, maybe locate your nearest ATM so that you can get some cash, and getting that, right, where you don't have to have every company building an ATM locator, right? How do you rely on APIs to help drive and fuel that and expose that through? Before joining AWS, I was at a big bank in the US. We had a huge credit card business, right? And as part of that, right, we had to do millions of credit checks, on credit card transactions a day. That was all fueled by a massive set of APIs, right? And it was interesting because we had to have a whole account on AWS set up just to handle our APIs for our credit card business. That's how many APIs and what volume of transactions that we were putting through. And as we look, at the banks, right? A lot of it is moving toward more of an event-driven architecture, And again, APIs are helping fuel that transition into a more event-driven type of processing. How do I get a real-time account alert? How do I know when a payment has been made? How do I tailor personalized messages on the demand, on the fly, right? So going through that, right, it really helps open it up, and creating personalized, experiences. So that's one of the things that a lot of customers want. They want a more personalized and tailored experience, right? Again, how can you help do that? How do you connect into other things that you know? How do you provide a more unified experience to that customer, right? Even across within an organization. So if I have, say, a bigger bank, I think we know a few here in Hong Kong. Maybe I have my bank account relationship. They have my credit cards. I have maybe some loans. I maybe have some insurance policies, right? How do you unify that, right? Very different businesses, right? When you're looking at a company or organization, they're running as divisions, which are almost little companies unto themselves within that organization. APIs help make that transparent so that you can have that unified experience across multiple divisions within an organization, right? And providing a better experience to the customer. When we look at what the APIs really can help us do, right? Getting closer to customers, right? That's my favorite one, right? I'm customer obsessed. I want to do and tailor the best customer experience that I can. So how do you leverage those APIs to get there? How do you enter into new markets? How do you enter a new product that's being offered, right? How do you potentially move to a distributed ledger? How do you potentially start looking at digital currencies that you never had before, and how do you incorporate that? How do you incorporate, if I'm a bank and I see all the fintechs that are out there creating these new microservices and capabilities, how do I take advantage of that? How do I leverage what others do and do it extraordinarily well? Because they're focusing on one smaller component or feature, right, compared to my broader banking ecosystem. So I can easily integrate those capabilities in with open APIs and an open banking type of platform. So how are some of the ways that banks and financial services can approach this, right? Because again, you have a mainframe that's been out there for 40 years, you're not changing it overnight. So this is a pattern that I actually used in one of my old companies, right? Where we basically created a disintermediation layer between the legacy platforms and what we were doing on the front end. So that we actually created APIs that then, wrapped the traditional legacy capabilities, but allowed me to have more of an open API front end experience. So being able to, leverage the APIs as a modern way to while you still have that traditional platform behind the scenes. The next one is you can obviously look at starting to shift some of those capabilities from a legacy environment into the cloud and then start decomposing those monolith applications into more microservices. So you can just take a bite at a time out of that legacy application and start transforming it one piece at a time. And then you have the most extreme case is, hey, I'm going to get rid of what I had. I'm going to start over. And we actually, one of the customers I was working with, they actually had all three of these patterns in play in their organization. And so they had a number of applications which they actually said, these are dead to us. We're not going to carry these platforms forward in a go-forward state. So they made deliberate decisions, and they took years to basically rebuild in a cloud-native fashion a new set of capabilities internally. For other systems, right, they retained the core, moved it to the cloud, and then looked at evolving that in a second and third wave, and continued to refine those applications. So with that, right, what is this all? The time for change is now. It continues to be a time, right? You know, I know many companies have started to change and evolve over time, but there's no better time now than to double down on looking at transforming and evolving the core banking platforms, moving to an open banking platform fueled by APIs. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark, for your insights on open banking and how OpenAPI contribute to it. I believe the audience should be interested to know more about live example. So we will have an exciting panel discussion later for us about the topic of fintech and API.
The API Connect Hong Kong 2023 conference is powered by bNovelty Limited. Check out more API-related education content on bnovelty.com or apidays.hk for more information.